I do have a presentation, but before I jump into that, I just want to share a little bit about why I care about these species, what brought me here. So as Anastasia mentioned, my background is a registered herbalist. And as an herbalist, you have no idea what type of people will come to you. So for me, I opened up my private practice after grad school. And the theme of my patients were people that said, "Hey, Danielle, I've tried every practitioner. You're my last resort." This was all ages, all genders, all sorts of conditions. The theme that I found running through my clientele were people that had autoimmunity, chronic illness, and misdiagnosed ailments. So essentially something that the Western world said, you have this, they put a label on something and it didn't align with what was truly going on with their bodies. They were treated improperly. And what this really brought was this massive range of underactive and overactive immune system activity happening. And it was really interesting. Okay, what I would create my own individual formulations for every body, right? Every body's unique. This is actually very traditional in systems of medicine like Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine. It's very new, our Western model, where we have one medication for lots of conditions. It actually was the opposite. Each body was treated because each of our bodies are made up of different constitutions. We all have different body types, different temperaments. There's all different words for kind of these same conditions based on where in the world you are looking at it from. But essentially what I came to was formulations that were based, the main ingredient was functional mushrooms, which is under this category called adaptogens, which I'll get into. And I just want to paint the picture. A lot of people hear the word mushroom and they're growing in popularity today, but I want to distinguish these mushrooms from what most of us think of, right? When most of us think of the word mushroom, we think of culinary varieties, right? Those we cook with, the portobellos in the kitchen, psychedelic varieties, or poison, right? That's pretty much always what I hear. Just a kind of fun fact, all three of those varieties of functional mushrooms grow from the earth. And the mushrooms we're talking about are functional mushrooms. They grow from trees. So I have a few examples to share with you. This is a reishi mushroom. This is a chaga mushroom. Very, very different than what you might think of, especially chaga, right? When you hear the word mushroom. These are traditional Chinese medicines. And some of the oldest medicines that humans have been using. So despite them being potentially new to us in the West, we as humans actually have a history of using them for many things, whether it's utilitarian, medicine, food, agriculture, for up to 5,000 years. We have documented use of us using them. So it's not new. I think of bringing mushrooms and adaptogens back into our world as almost a remembrance. So anyways, why... And again, I could talk to you all for 3 hours. I teach mycology and get on loop. So I will potentially share the presentation or I'll share it after. But I'm so passionate about these species. So I started formulating with them, giving them to my clients who had, right, either underactive immune systems in the cases of chronic illness or overactive immune systems in the case of autoimmune bodies. And these functional mushrooms are known as immune modulators. This is really getting us into what adaptogens are. So immune modulators, it means that there's constituents within these mushrooms. They're a long sugar chain, a polysaccharide that can either upregulate, stimulate immune cell activity or downregulate immune cell activity based on the body that's ingesting them. So very interesting, right? Typically we think of, oh, I'm sick. Let me take, if we're using a natural medicine, let me take an herb to help stimulate my immune system. So we look at the echinaceas or the elderberries or the golden seals, or what too often happens in the Western world is someone who has autoimmune, too much immune cell activity happening. They're put on an immunosuppressant, right? So it tampers their immune system to the point that they then become vulnerable to all sorts of antigens in the environment, right? They're getting sick. Many people will even develop cancers. And so very unique that these functional mushrooms, and there's a grouping of them, including some plants as well, that are almost like cruise control, right? This modulation, cruise control for your immune system. So let's say Anastasia and I both take the exact same dose of a reishi mushroom extract, and I might have been traveling the last couple months. I was hiking in Nepal. I was honeymooning. My system's really vulnerable. I could take a reishi mushroom extract and it would activate B cells, T cells, natural killer cells in my body to bring me up to a level where I can fight off what potentially might be around me. Let's make up a situation where Anastasia has an autoimmune illness that she's dealing with. She could take the exact same dose of the same reishi mushroom extract, and it would downregulate her overactive immune system to bring her into a state of equilibrium, of homeostasis. So this is so fascinating. And the functional mushrooms are just a small aspect of this world of adaptogens. So let's break that down. You might be saying, like, adapt to what? But you've probably heard of many of the species that fall within this adaptogen umbrella. So within herbal medicine, we classify different plants and fungi based on what they do, right? So we have herbs that put us to sleep, right? Relax our nervous system. We call these nervines or sedatives, right? The chamomiles or maybe valeriana you've heard of. Then we have herbs that are good for our digestive system, right? We call these carminatives, warming, spicy herbs. Adaptogens are another grouping like this, right? So it's an umbrella category that contains about 25 both plants and fungi. In my new book that Anastasia had pulled up, I write about 21 adaptogens, and I chose 21 that are the most common, the most accessible, and the most relevant for what most of us are dealing with today and what we could use support with. So I'll just mention a few that you might be familiar with to say, like, okay, maybe this will land. Turmeric is an adaptogen, right? You've probably heard of turmeric. Cacao, the original bean that our chocolate is derived from. Ashwagandha, right, is this Ayurvedic root that's gaining popularity. And then there's maybe some that could be new to you, like chaga mushroom or astragalus root, right? So we have this grouping, but what they all have in common is this ability to listen to your body, right? And Anastasia was like, it could be, we could look at it through a very heady lens or a very realistic scientific lens. But what they're doing is working with the body that's ingesting them to bring that body into a greater state of equilibrium. Okay, so they do this in a variety of ways, and I get really deep into the physiology in my book. But for today's purposes, I'll share the high level. Okay, so, and then if you have questions, I love to get geeky and nerdy about it. So high level, all adaptogens are non-toxic. This is really important. So even I'm standing in my kitchen right now, even herbs like garlic, right, are actually toxic at higher doses, right? It's an herbal medicine that can burn our tissue, skin state. Things like echinacea, right, can be toxic if you take for more than a couple days, a couple weeks consistently. So it's actually quite rare to find a group of herbs that are non-toxic. It means there's no upper limit, there's not an overdose capacity, and it's actually safe to take every day and recommended to take daily as more of a food, right? Think of turmeric or the cacao, the chocolate. These are more, even a lot of mushrooms you might think of, they're more of foods than of a strong medicine. Another aspect to all of our adaptogens is that they are non-specific. Okay, so we kind of spoke to that a little bit when we talked about this modulation. I'll give you another example that might help it land a little bit more. With maybe we'll choose cacao. Cacao's been coming up. We all love chocolate. It's coming to the holidays, right? So cacao, really interesting adaptogen that helps us understand this non-specific nature of this grouping. All of our plants and fungi have hundreds of compounds that make up what they are, right? They have vitamins and minerals and all sorts of polyphenols and polysaccharides and terpenes and all these constituents. And cacao specifically has compounds that we might recognize. It has one called theobromine, right, which is like caffeine sister molecule. So some people might take chocolate and get a little boost of energy, right? Or some people take chocolate and they get in this flow state. That's this theobromine activity. So it's more of a stimulant, more of an upper. However, cacao is also our richest natural food source in magnesium, right? Magnesium is our cellular relaxer. I literally think of magnesium as the number one nutrient deficiency in the American population, and we're so stressed. I'm like, of course, we're deficient in the nutrient that's allowing us to relax on a cellular level. So within our cacao bean, we have both this theobromine and this relaxing magnesium. So depending on the state that you're in when you ingest that chocolate, that adaptogen, you might either feel a little more energized, or perhaps you might feel more calm, more relaxed, right? And so each of our adaptogens can go in this bidirectional range based on where you are at when you meet that adaptogen. Really, really interesting, right? It's this push and pull, this gas and brake effect that each of our adaptogens contain. So they're all non-specific, they're all non-toxic, and they're all normalizing, right? So this normalizing piece is really fascinating because these 21 species are the most nutrient-rich species on the planet. Like, it's mind-blowing. I can share some graphs after, maybe you'll get into the book, but I'm holding chaga, for example. Chaga is our most antioxidant-rich food on planet Earth. So one serving, as Anastasia mentioned, my company, Four Sigmatic, we make it really easy to get these wild organic adaptogens in daily forms. One serving of the chaga we offer has an equivalent antioxidant load as 40 pounds of raw carrots, right? So when we're saying these are the most nutrient dense, it's in every culture, these adaptogens have been utilized, have been revered. If we go and look in Siberia and Scandinavia, which is where our company started, or we look in Mexico and South American cultures with cacao, or in India and in China, these have been so revered because of this profound nutrient density, whether it's the antioxidant load, or, we look at adaptogens like acerola cherry being the most vitamin C rich food on the planet. They're all like the top of the chart, right? These are the creme de la creme of the most powerful foods on earth. To the point, I feel so grateful that I get to work with them and share about their properties and how much they can benefit our bodies, because it wasn't always this accessible to be able to use these adaptogens. This reishi mushroom, for example, it's the number one revered species in traditional Chinese medicine. So TCM, we have these three rankings. They rank all their herbs. They even use plant parts, all different ingredients for medicine. And they rank them based on their ability to work with a range of bodies and how effective they are. So the top tier in TCM are called superior tonics. And reishi is the number one herb in all of the superior tonics. So this is the most revered of thousands of species in TCM. And for years, it was actually illegal for common people to use a reishi mushroom. So in ancient China, if you went out to the forest and you found a reishi mushroom, by law, you had to go and deliver it to the emperor's palace because it was illegal for commoners. It was too special, it was too revered. And each one of our adaptogens has similar stories of people hiking for days or weeks to trade these powerful species. And today they're accessible to us, right? We can get them in our coffee like we do. I have my apothecary behind me, right? We can go and get them on Amazon or at our Whole Foods. And yet I find there's this big knowledge gap about where we're at now, the state of our bodies, and then being able to understand, learn, and know about these natural superfoods that we need to, or that could be really beneficial to bring us into the state of health and vitality that we're all craving. So let me just share a little bit about some of the kind of key reasons that people might take adaptogens. Kind of the overarching theme with adaptogens is stress support. And they do many other things, but it's very important to talk about this stress, because at least here in the US, and I think it's safe to say almost globally, we've never been more stressed as a species. And I'm not just talking about the stress from news and traffic and pressure and time speeding up, but environmentally, our bodies are dealing with more stress than we have ever had in the course of our evolution, right? We have microplastics in our air and our water and chemicals in our food. And I mean, I could go on and on, but we're demanding a lot of our bodies. And when we think about the evolutionary response of stress, I think of us out in the bush going to fight a tiger, right? This is like the most primitive example of our bodies experiencing stress. It's a survival technique, right? So we'd go out there, there's an animal that's coming to attack us. And in response, our body, our adrenal glands, right? We have these sites of endocrine production in our body that rush our bloodstream to give us what we need to the adrenaline, the cortisol to be able to survive, right? To fight or to run. Now we know there's freeze and fawn as well, but basically this fight or flight response, right? And what that does is it essentially tells all the other systems of our body to go on airplane mode, right? To take the back seat. When we're in a stress response, we need all of our energy to survive. So our body is not telling us if we're hungry, if we're tired, if we're horny, if all these other parts about being a human take the back seat. And so many of my clients come to me and they say, I'm gaining weight, I'm losing weight, I can't sleep, I have headaches, I'm breaking out in these rashes, I have no energy, I'm having headaches all day, whatever it might be. And they say, oh, no, it's not related to stress. And yet we bring adaptogens on board. First step to support the body's stress system, to bring the body back into the state of normalization. Certain adaptogens, they work with stress in different ways. Reishi actually has these incredible compounds. They're called ganoderic acids that literally help bind to cortisol and move it through the system faster. Like, I'm going to come take that stress and get it out of you. Right? They all have these different tactics working either directly with cortisol or with our HPA axis. To bring our bodies into this state of neutrality, of basically getting out of that quick fight or flight response. And it's fascinating what begins to happen, what begins to clear when our bodies are no longer stuck in this state of acute stress response, right? It's almost like I think of if you're in the shower and there's this foggy window, you're so stressed, we don't actually understand what's going on with the body. Right. And so much of the time, what's happening from our Western pharmaceutical perspective is people are sharing these symptoms and they're getting treated with those symptoms instead of the underlying state of stress that's truly going on in the body. And so when we deal with that stress and we calm the stress response, the body can actually start diverting energy towards listening. Wow, I am tired. Or wow, I am getting the proper hunger signals or the proper full signals, whatever it might be. The body begins to redivert its energy. And then you get a clearer picture of what's left, what's truly going on, what symptoms remain once that stress has been supported. So what we find, right, when we think adaptogens, the first step is really supporting our body's ability to deal with stress, which then the secondary benefits become really robust, right? People work with adaptogens and it's a whole range of, I can focus, I have more productivity, I have more physical energy, my immune system is stronger, I haven't gotten sick for the first time in many seasons or many years, I'm sleeping deeper, you name it. Okay, I didn't even get to share my presentation. I'm like, keep looking at the clock, but I would love, I don't know if we have a few more minutes or I'd love to open it up to questions and just see how this is landing, what's making sense, anything you're wanting to know.
Thank you. So we will open it up to questions. And we also, like, if somebody asks a question that you might be able to share something, we'll give you sharing capabilities. So that's not a problem at all. I do want to share with everybody really quick. So this Healing Adaptogens book, in here, it basically goes through each of these 21 adaptogens and it tells you what the history, the studies that have been done on it, the benefits of it, and how you can incorporate it into your life. Even if you're not going to buy the products, you don't have to buy Four Sigmatic. They just make it easy. But this is like the best, adaptogen 101 that you can get out there is that particular book. But they also have this Healing Mushrooms culinary book, which it has recipes and ways to incorporate it into your food and meals and things like that. So just do consider it. I will be dropping links to her website and Four Sigmatic website in the chat, but I just wanted to put that out there. And then let's just go ahead and open it up. And, it might be easiest, Danielle, for you to just kind of look around at who might have their hand raised and just call on them. And then we'll just have you take it from there.
Patricia Fripp has her hand up, both hands up.
This sounds great. I want some. Susan Rowan and I don't cook. We want to put it in our blender drinks or something. So Anastasia will let us know. Now, I am a basically healthy person, few aches and pains, nothing. I'm quite energetic and want to stay this way. So it's good for people that think there's nothing really wrong with them.
Great question, Patricia. Yeah, I think this is actually a person like you is who I would love to start bringing adaptogens into their life, where we don't wait until something is wrong to then start supporting our body from this nutritional perspective, right? It's never the wrong time to eat nutrient-dense foods, eat nutrient-dense meals. This is maintaining that vitality, that energy that you're currently saying is strong, which is amazing. So yeah, essentially what we do, I create our formulas at Four Sigmatic, but there's tons of brands and that make adaptogens. You just want to make sure, and Healing Adaptogens is a great resource to make sure you're getting the right thing. There's a lot of snake oil out on the market. So my goal as an herbalist is to make sure you're getting the true species from the country that it comes from, the proper dosage, right? I see so many people are like, I bought this ashwagandha, isn't doing anything. Like, well, is it actually the root? Has it been extracted? What dosage are you taking? So just sharing those guidelines. But then from there, absolutely start bringing in, it's like you wouldn't say, oh, I don't need to eat a vitamin C rich food today. I have plenty of energy. We always want to nourish and sustain our state of health, ideally before we need to. And I think we're shifting that way as realizing that's the best way to have long-term health instead of waiting until we're ill.
Do you suggest we have a consultation with you before we start dosing ourselves with it?
Great question. There's never a wrong time to have a consultation with an herbalist, right? To have that direct dosage and the species that are specific to your body type. However, what's really unique about adaptogens that's different from the rest of the hundreds of herbs that we deal with in herbal medicine is that they are really safe to start experimenting on your own, right? So it's a great toe in, right? Or putting your foot in the water to begin to listen to your body, to begin to experiment without there being a toxic dose or without it pushing your body too far in one direction or another, which is why they're so interesting, right? They have these profound abilities to really affect our bodies, and yet they're what we call a level 1 herb. So we have 4 levels of herbs based on its safety and toxicity, and they're level 1. So they're in the category of things like mints and chamomiles and these really, really safe herbal medicines that can be taken by any age, whether it's babies or elders, regardless of your condition or state of your body. So it is a great kind of group of plants and fungi to start on your own and see how you feel. Alan, I see your hand.
Hi, Danielle. Thank you. I'm curious about one thing that you didn't talk about, and if you have any experience in and what you think about psychedelic or psilocybin mushrooms.
Yeah, great question. We are in a kind of mushroom revolution, especially, all over the world right now. And I'm very excited about it. I think, while within my herbal practice and within Four Sigmatic, we don't experiment or formulate with psilocybin containing functional mushrooms or medicinal mushrooms. but we're seeing huge strides in mental health. My husband is actually a doctor that works in psychedelic medicine. And so we have this really amazing duality where I'm working with the functional mushrooms and he's being able to work with psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. And we're just seeing phenomenal results for many conditions. And I think those will begin to grow. But, for now with PTSD and anxiety and treatment resistant depression, and we're seeing people that can have an experience, 1 to 10 times and not have to take whatever they were prescribed for many decades prior, and having these really profound experiences. And I'm so excited about the decriminalization of nature is really what it feels like it is. Hi, Christine.
Hi, am I audible?
Yeah, we got you.
Oh, I'm thrilled. I couldn't before say anything or do anything, but now that I got your attention, what I really would love to know is just where to order these books. I'd like to get, I think there are 2 different ones you showed us, like 2 things that were held up, and I'd like to be able to order them immediately or go find them. What should I do?
Thank you. So I'll put it in the chat right now. You can go to, we have a website that's just for the book, healingadaptogens.com. But you can also get it anywhere books are sold. So you can go on Amazon, you can go to Barnes and Noble. We published with Hay House, who are wonderful. So we have the audiobook that I read, if that's easier for you. And it's something like $2.99 if you have a road trip coming up or a plane around the holidays. But yeah, anywhere, Booktopia, yeah, they're all over. Anastasia put it in as well.
Wonderful. And can if we were to send it back to you, could we even get an autographed one?
Oh, I would love to.
I guess you have an address here somewhere. Thank you. I'm just thrilled that I was finally able to listen in, and I'd like to learn as much as I can about this. I can see this as being really life-changing in a positive way for a change. We hear a lot about the things that are challenging and difficult and that just happen. And here's a way to constructively improve your life. And I'm just thrilled. So
Thank you.
I will be in touch with you. Maybe there's a contact thing here somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that resonates really deeply. I know we're at time, but my original background was as an environmentalist, and I was a big activist and doing keynote speaking and protesting, and really wearing out my body, was really sick for years. And I lived in Asia for about 3 years and worked and studied out there, Ayurveda and yoga, and learned herbal medicine out there by living with Hill Tribe people. And yeah, I finally realized if I'm sick myself, I'm spreading more of that to the world. What is that? I can't show up for anyone, let alone the planet and this movement that I care about, if I'm not nourished myself. So it really shifted about 10 years ago, my approach. And I said, we have to start healing each other, right? All of us have so much passion and vitality and ability to make our mark on this world. And we can't do that if we're not nourished properly, if we're not sleeping, if we're chronically stressed. And so, yeah.
Danielle, Bill Buchanan's had his hand up quite a while.
Oh, good. Yes. Where are you? I don't know if I see him.
Looks like he's frozen at the moment, at least on my screen.
Maybe that's why the hand has been up.
Maybe. Hey, Bert is the next one then. He's had his hand up.
Hi, Bert.
Hi. Yeah, coincidentally, when we went vegan, I started using mushrooms as a substitute for meat in my dishes. We had portobello last night. But I didn't know anything about adaptogens. I'm very interested in looking at your book and learning from it, because there's a whole family, and I'm pretty much restricted to what I pick up at the grocery store. So I just wanted to thank you very much for your presentation, and to say that it's a real discovery how nourishing and healthy this is. So thank you very much for making your presentation.
Did you give us a number to contact you at?
And yeah, there's many culinary mushrooms that are also not adaptogens per se. There's one culinary mushroom that's also an adaptogen. It's called lion's mane mushroom. You could Some grocery stores are carrying it now, like more co-ops or health food stores, some farmers markets, really amazing for cognition. So that's a great, if you want to start cooking with it, it actually, fascinating. There's 2 compounds within lion's mane that activate this hormone called nerve growth factor. So there's a lot of research around lion's mane for neurodegenerative diseases, things like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. But I think of it like a light switch turning on our body's ability to fire and connect neurons. So really, really interesting functional mushroom that's also culinary. And then many medicinal mushrooms that are culinary as well. So things like shiitake just is great for the liver, for blood sugar balance, maitake, oyster mushrooms. So even if you're cooking with mushrooms, yeah, I'd encourage you to branch into some of these maybe more funny looking exotic names. They're quite powerfully medicinal as well as delicious.
I see Anastasia has her hand up.
Yes, and Christine, I did drop Danielle's information in the chat, so you should be able to get that. If not, then I can get it to you offline. So if you don't see that. And I'm
Okay, Anastasia, yeah, I don't know if she's giving out a number. I can see an email, thank you, I think, or at least some information, and I really appreciate that. Is there actually a person, a texting phone number, anything or that you're willing to share, or would you rather not? Whatever.
that would be a question for Danielle. So
That's why I was
Christine's
asking
wanting
her.
to reach you directly. So if that's possible, you could drop that in the chat or direct to her.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we'll connect you, Christine, because I think
That would be
we'll really get a
wonderful.
lot from these books, and as well as connecting with Danielle. So the nice thing is when you go to a specialist, they can just bypass everything and just say this is what I would recommend for you specifically. So there's always benefit to that. But these books were fascinating to me, and I've like made all my kids look at it, and they know I'm a mushroom junkie now. So I wanted to ask Danielle, can you briefly explain about the way different adaptogens support each other and different things to bring out the efficacy of them? Because as an example, because of the book and understanding it more now, when I do a turmeric tincture, and I got myself a little pepper shaker, and I always add pepper to my turmeric because I know that that's going to help enhance the deliverability of that. And so I found that combination, and you do that like in a lot of these products, you guys are adding things to make them more efficient. But maybe talk about why that works, because that to me is very fascinating.
Danielle, before you jump into that, Bill Buchanan's back now, so maybe he
Good. Yes,
ask
Bill's
his
been holding
question.
his hand up for a while. Thank you, Gary.
Good morning, Danielle. Can everybody hear me?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
My laptop just got a little tired, so I'm going to take a power nap. So I don't know what happened. My wife and I live in Mill Valley, and we're pretty much into natural foods and that sort of thing. As a matter of fact, if she adds one more natural supplement to the breakfast table, I'm going to have to build an annex or something to handle. So, but anyway, so I want to be careful with what I bring to her on my notes here. But I have an organic garden for decades. We had an organic garden outside, so we're very careful about things like additives to the soil. One year, I got this brilliant idea of going into the basement. We have a kind of a natural basement. It's not remodeled or anything. And I said, let's try to grow mushrooms. It was a complete failure. So my question is, how easy is it to grow mushrooms like the one you had that looked like a cinnamon bun or something like that? The Chinese one, the Ricci. Yeah. How easy would that be we're having a Mediterranean climate, and it was completely dark and, a little bit moist. Would that be possible to do here in Mill Valley?
Great questions. So I love growing mushrooms. I have lots of resources for you, so get in touch. I have some books. I have some online information that would be really helpful. Of course, every mushroom species prefers different environments, and there's certain mushrooms that are easier to grow and cultivate at home. The mushrooms that would be easier to grow at home that are also culinary and adaptogens would be this lion's mane that I talked about, the lion's mane that's great for your brain. Oyster mushrooms would be the place that I would recommend starting. They're a delicious choice culinary mushroom. They do have medicinal properties. They're not quite an adaptogen, but it's a great place to start diving into growing and cultivating and getting the climate just right. Other species like this reishi mushroom that you mentioned, or this chaga. Reishi is possible to grow at home, much more challenging. Chaga, not possible. I'll share why. Both of these mushrooms are, they grow on wood, and mushrooms are either, they grow in synergy or actually are parasites. So the chaga mushroom parasitizes the birch tree. So it actually infects sick or dying birch trees, takes 20 years to fully mature, and then will actually decompose, right? Mushrooms are our grand decomposers of the world. And so they'll decompose the tree after about 20 years. So it's nearly impossible to cultivate the chaga at home, which is why we actually go get ours. It's from the largest birch forest in the world. It's called the taiga in Siberia, bigger than the continental US. So yeah, you want to make sure with especially adaptogens and functional varieties, there's some that you can grow at home, and couldn't be a bigger proponent of taking advantage of what you have at home and growing and supporting local. And yet some of our adaptogens, it's actually quite important to source them from their country of origin. This is a whole other amazing topic that I could talk on for an hour, but it's called xenohormesis. And there's actually, based on where the species is grown, it develops compounds that react to its environment, right? So a lot of our adaptogens are faced with a lot of stressful environmental conditions, whether it's rocky soils or ice. They grow in Mongolia and up in Iceland. And so in response to those environmental conditions, the species develop certain constituents that are actually some of the key compounds that our body utilizes to support us with stress and become more resilient. So, yeah, there's a strong difference between when you're getting something from its native land, wild harvested, versus grown at home. And I think it's just choosing the right species that you can do one or the other with. And I just also want to briefly mention, I fully hear you about not wanting another supplement on the counter. Yes to that. Something that I do at Four Sigmatic is create the whole philosophy is, how do we incorporate these superfoods, these functional herbal medicines as more of food? And so what I do is think about what are routines, what are habits, what are food sources that we use every day, and how do I almost sneak these high dosage, potent medicines into those things. So our most popular kind of products is coffee. So we use, organic single origin Arabica fair trade beans from a woman-owned co-op in Honduras. And then I add a full supplement dose of the mushrooms into each serving. So it tastes like coffee. It is coffee, but you add the mushrooms in there, right? And I do that with matcha and chai and protein powders and all sorts of products to almost not have another supplement, and see if you could just upgrade an existing routine. One that's, making the food more like, or the medicine more like food. And two, it becomes really easy to create consistency and a routine around taking these every day, because it's, it's like you can't take kale once and be like, cool, I have my vitamin K store for the month, right? I'm full of all this nutrition. You must take it consistently to reap these benefits. So it's hard to start anything new and make a habit out of it. So I think about what are these existing habits and how can we upgrade the things that we already do.
Yeah, Alan Garber's got his hand up.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Danielle. I have two questions, if I may. One is, this is from my wife, actually. Do you have any recommendations for vestibular migraines? And the second question is, do you or your husband have any experience with MDMA?
So the first question, I would say, let's talk outside of this meeting. Something that is really deep in my philosophy of clinical practice is looking at symptom pictures instead of the diagnosis. So we could have, the same diagnosis for 10 people and their symptom picture is all different. And so looking at, many aspects holistically about what your wife is taking, what she's eating, what her symptom pictures are. And then from there, really looking at treating the body and then seeing how we can reduce the headaches, but from this more root-based place. So what nutrients is she deficient in? And working from that state. So yeah, would love to chat further there. Right now, my husband works with ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. Ketamine is the only legal psychedelic in the US under the DEA license. So we're very hopeful and excited as laws begin to change and move, and feel very passionately about the benefits of MDMA. But right now, through a legal clinical perspective, it's just he's just able to work with ketamine. But it's opening the door. So we're in a psychedelic revolution, and it's an exciting time for sure.
Okay. All right. I'll have my wife get in touch with you.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Danielle, looks like Michael Wilstein.
Yeah, quick question. I'm heading down to Walgreens this morning. Is there a product that I can pick up that level 1 that you would recommend?
At Walgreens.
Yeah, great question. At Walgreens, where would you look? I would say the 2 adaptogens that you would most likely find at Walgreens would be a turmeric, right? So Anastasia mentioned this briefly, but with turmeric, there's a couple things to look for. We want to make sure that it's organic for sure. It's a root. And ideally, all of our turmeric root extracts, an extract is going to be more potent. And see if there's a supplement that has also added black pepper, right? So we'll speak a little bit to this synergy, but ingredients are awesome on their own. But then when we begin to formulate, it's like 1 + 1 becomes 3, right? So there's this building power upon it. And turmeric and black pepper is a great example. So turmeric, this amazing anti-inflammatory root, the key compound that's responsible for that anti-inflammation is called curcumin, and curcumin actually is activated up to 1,000 times more potently in our body when we have a pairing. It can be like 2% of black pepper paired with it, but it activates that curcumin and allows the anti-inflammatory properties to be more bioavailable to your body. So look for a turmeric with a little black pepper. The other adaptogen that would likely be at Walgreens right now is ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is going to be very stress supportive. The Latin name, Withania somnifera, actually means to put you to sleep. It's not sedative, but it is really profoundly acting on your HPA axis, going to really kind of speak to that balancing equilibrium, stress support. There's secondary benefits to ashwagandha with like brain health as well and cognition. But ashwagandha is probably the second most popular. It's recently.
How do you spell that?
I'm going to put it in the chat for you.
Okay.
Ashwagandha and then turmeric, but plus black pepper would be maybe your 2 best Walgreens options. Claudette.
Okay. Claudette, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Do you cook with ashwagandha? I mean, I cook with turmeric, but can I cook with ashwagandha?
So ashwagandha is a root like turmeric, but it's not a root that you would like chop up and add as a spice or a seasoning. It actually, a nickname for it when I lived in India, it's like the equine root. So it kind of has like a horse smell to it. I like to think of it as it makes you as strong and graceful as a stallion. But it does have this kind of funky root, and it's actually part of the nightshade family. So it's a sister cousin to like tomato and eggplant and peppers. But the root itself, if you get just the root, like you can definitely order from places if you want to like get the root. I'm going to say Mountain Rose Herbs is a great option for that. But you would boil it and make it as a tea, would be the best option at home. And again, then here we get into this synergy again that Anastasia was talking about. The withanolides, these amazing compounds within the ashwagandha, are actually more fat soluble. So it's really important if you make your ashwagandha tea to add a splash of milk, right? Or nut milk or some sort of fat source. Ghee is common. It's the clarified butter that they add in India when they're making ashwagandha. And that makes your body able to utilize those fat soluble compounds in the root. So yeah, you're welcome.
Question?
Or Christine?
Yes. Is it ashwagandha here? I'm seeing it written as without a D, but with an HA at the end.
Oh,
is it?
That's a typo. Ashwagandha. There we go. Thank you. Moving too fast.
HA.
Yep.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. That information, and we'll definitely go searching for them if I can spell them right myself. Is the number you gave us something that can be texted to, that 805 number?
Yeah, that's myself.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Open book over here. Tana?
Yes.
Thank you.
Fascinating presentation, because I grew up with the Chinese herbal medicine, and my mother forced me to drink this bitter Chinese medicine to strengthen my body. And yesterday, I didn't know what word adaptogen is, so I actually looked it up in Korean, which is made up of Chinese characters, and it means organ strengthening compounds. So that's what adaptogen means in Korean, Chinese, and Japanese, and that's exactly what it does. I didn't know it was immune modulating. I have a couple interesting stories. Korean, where things are grown makes difference. Chinese emperor used to get Korean ginseng for his health, because Korean ginseng is very famous as a organ strengthening compounds. So I grew up, watching the ginseng fields. It takes 7 years to harvest a ginseng root, and it takes up so much from the ground that after harvesting, you cannot plant anything. You have to let the ground rest to recuperate from being lost so much to the ginseng root. So that's what's in the ginseng root. And the other thing is, I used to live in California selling telecommunication, very stressed, used to drink a lot of coffee, and I tried to stop drinking coffee, but it gave me such a severe headaches. Every time I stopped drinking coffee, I just couldn't do it. But my friend was selling coffee called Gano coffee, which had powder of reishi mushroom. Yeah. And I don't know the science behind it, but after that, I have no headaches if I don't drink coffee. I don't know, but it worked for me. So those are comments I wanted to make about your presentation. Fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Those are such important stories. And it's amazing history. And I love that adaptogen translation in Korean. Ginseng, one of the most famous adaptogens, just incredible. And Ling Shi, right? Your mom maybe brewed, this is Ling Shi in TCM is the name for reishi. Coffee, as you mentioned, they're so bitter. That's been one of our challenges as well. How do we take something every day that's so bitter? And at least in the Western palate, there's pretty much only 2 bitter flavors that we know and love: coffee and chocolate, right? So what we do is we disguise these super bitter mushrooms into coffee, right? It's already bitter. You can't taste it. And then we have our version of our hot chocolate, our cacao, that we also hide, the bitterness in. And I love that story with the coffee. And there's so much to say about mushroom coffee, but yeah, it's real coffee, right? And what's happening is coffee is beneficial for us in the right amount. It's actually the number one source of antioxidants in the American diet. Not that it's teeming with antioxidants. We're unfortunately not eating enough other colorful fruits and veggies, but coffee in itself doesn't have to be bad, but it is taxing, right? Stimulating. I think of like our adrenal glands, back of our back, as cups, and coffee's taxing, right? It's pulling to give us this energy. And then later in the day, we get a crash, we get jitters, we get the headache.
Oh, no.
And adaptogens are tonifying, right? They're strengthening to these systems. And so I think of them like refilling the cup of our adrenals, right? And so when you add mushrooms to your coffee, and you could do this on your own or use the Gano coffee, anything that works for you. But that combination, you don't get a crash, you don't get jitters, right? You're not left with a state of depletion that's then signaling your body, I'm dehydrated, I'm getting this headache, the jittery feeling, whatever the symptom you might experience. So there's another really beautiful synergy between the coffee and the mushrooms beyond the taste. And then, of course, all the other secondary benefits you get with stress support and energy and focus, et cetera.
Danielle, before Thomas leaves, his wife posted a question in the chat.
Well, I think Danielle answered it because he was asking where to buy the mushrooms, and so she just drops the link again.
Okay,
so
perfect.
Thomas, I'm assuming you're talking about the mushrooms like Four Sigmatic, or were you talking about where she can buy mushrooms like just the straight source? Because if so, that would need to be clarified.
Yeah, my wife wanted to know where to get them. It looks like there's a bagged product, so I think I've got the link now, and she's happy.
Perfect. And yeah, if you do, again, you don't have to buy the book, but if you do, the third section is a shopping guide. So I really, Four Sigmatic, I love formulating and creating these products, but there's many products that you can get in all sorts of forms. And the shopping guide basically teaches you, and it's meant to be evergreen and last throughout time, but to teach you what to look for, right? So to say, okay, this is the country it should come from. This is the proper dosage. This is how it should be prepared. And then from there, there's more and more companies coming on the market every day, truly, in this mushroom space. And so that will give you the tools to be able to vet your own products.
My wife is a nuts and bark person. She loves it.
Oh, good.